And welcome back to the ABCs of ERP and Beyond. And in today's episode, we're tackling one of the most important and nerve-wracking milestones on any ERP project. Go live. Everyone wants it to go smoothly, but the reality is many go lives stumble and some fail outright. So why does this happen? Today, we'll break down the top 5 reasons your go live will fail. From consultants who don't fully understand the business to integrations that weren't tested. And probably test anywhere in the project is always going to be a benefit. We'll also look at the pitfalls of skipping proper cutover practice or mock cutovers, as we say, and the dangers of really underestimating that first critical week after go live. If you're heading toward a go live yourself, or even planning one down the road, or thinking about starting your ERP project, well, this is an episode that you won't want to miss as we talk about that critical go live. And I cannot do that without my fellow co-host, Nirav Shah. Welcome back.
Hey, Peter. Happy to be here. I got a new addition to my podcasting equipment that I have here. Can you guess what it is? Just throwing that out there. Can you guess what it is?
Given that you look the same, I don't think it's that. But I can say, suddenly you have a studio quality to your voice. It's almost like a radio voice.
Yeah, I could say I'm from the Midwest, so that probably has something to do with it. However, you're exactly right, Peter. I have invested in a professional microphone, so I'm super excited to use it for our podcast.
It's so great. It's so much better, honestly. It's like night and day. I'm not hearing your laptop microphones. It picks up your voice bouncing off the walls 7 times.
Right. I know, exactly. Finally, after 60 episodes or so, I decided to invest in a proper mic. And better late than never, as they say. Or maybe we just go back and reshoot the other 60 that we did. I don't know.
You probably could. But it sounds great. It's thick and professional. And whoever's the guy that has to produce our videos and cut and edit, and he's going to enjoy not really having to do a lot to your audio.
Yeah, I feel for the guy. So I wanted to make sure I made it easy.
Yeah,
hit the easy button. I hit the easy button here.
Yep. It's great. Good. And what an episode to go straight into, to test the mic out. Let's see how riled up we get as we think about the dreaded go live and the possible failures. And I've always found it amazing, given that an ERP project is going to be one of the most important projects, certainly the most important project in terms of IT for a business, probably one of the most expensive projects. And I don't just mean financially expensive. I'm talking about actually the heart transplant, right? It's expensive in people's time, effort.
Yep.
And everything else, the shift, the process changes, the people aspect, like it's expensive to do this stuff. I'm always surprised with the stats that you see out there about the rate of failures of a go live of an ERP project. For me, it's crazy when people are like, 70% of the projects fail. Like, why? Why is that the case? That's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Doing this for 25 years now, Peter, you get to a certain point in the implementation where the executive team, the steering committee, all they see is saying, just go live. We need to go live now. The project has been going on longer than it should. The users are burnt out, right? Quote unquote, think you've tested as much as you can. And then you go live. And people think once you're live, it's always better than what you have now. Right. And that's one of the reasons why you implement an ERP system, because better than what you have now. You may be using 3 or 4 different disparate systems. So it won't be any worse. But quite frankly, it could be much worse if you don't properly understand what a go live means and how it could cripple your business literally as soon as you turn on the new system, and you can't ship, you can't invoice, you can't take credit card payments, you can't do the things you normally were able to do manually outside an integrated system, but now you're in the confines of an integrated system, and the system's not just going to let you willy-nilly do things that you're able to do in the past. Although people always say, it's better than what we're doing now, let's get into a new system. In theory, that's correct. But in practicality, that could really have really negative effects in your business if you don't take the proper steps to understand what a successful go live will be like, right? And these systems are not like QuickBooks. They're not like Shopify. It's not like a WordPress site. An ERP system has real impact from department to department and just doesn't let you do things because you think in your head it's natural to do, right? Just because you use Shopify for 10 years and you could do a lot of different things manually, right? Doesn't mean you're going to be able to do the same thing in an ERP system. Just because you did a lot of things manually in QuickBooks, right? Or able to go on with your day, right? Without having to worry about the next department. In an ERP, that just doesn't happen. Like if you don't have proper orders in, if you don't have item numbers in on your sales orders, right? In your ERP, you can't create a pick. You can't create a shipment. If you don't have enough inventory in the proper default locations that the system is looking to ship out of, you're not going to be able to raise a pick. Now think about all these things that you're able to do manually right now. And that's the frustration. A lot of customers that embark on this project feel like my team is doing everything so manual that we don't want them to do manual things. We want to automate. We want to prevent negative inventory. We want to prevent having to look into Shopify for orders and then doing the accounting in QuickBooks. But they forget that in a connected system, it takes a little bit more thought and more discipline to do those same transactions. So yes, it's better than what you have now, but it could be worse than what you have now if you don't take the proper steps to understand what a successful cutover looks like. And today, we'll kind of walk through what are our top 5 stories or situations during an implementation that could cause your go live to fail.
Yep.
That's the last thing you want to do. You usually spend 80 to 90% of your ERP budget in the training, pilot testing, and implementation. And the last 20 to 10% should usually be spent on go live. But right now, with the failed implementations that happen in our industry, you have 80% or 90% of the implementation budget spent on the implementation. Then there's an overrun of another 40, 50, 100% at go live. That to me does not define success. There's a lot of people to blame in this situation, as we know, but we need to kind of, hopefully this is going to be informative enough for those folks that are going through this and are preparing for a go live that could maybe pull back a little bit to say, do we have everything discussed correctly? Do we have everything finalized? Do we know what our is when we go live, right? What's it going to look like? Or is everyone in a good position? Let's just, let's turn that throttle and let's get this plane in the air, right? You never want to build a plane when it's up in the air, quote unquote. You want to build it while it's sitting at the gate, right? Get it built, get everybody on board, and then let that plane take off, if that makes sense.
Yep. All right, let's get straight into it. Point number 1, I would say, is the biggest one. We know that ERP, if you take Acumatica, for example, there's only a handful of editions, and they say, if you're a manufacturer, use the manufacturing edition. That's the one that's going to be suited for you. But we know that ERP is not as clear cut as that. ERP is not a one size fits all. And because of that, it's really crucial that the consultant, the ERP vendor, grasps your business, understands your processes, your pain points, the way you do things, your industry specifics. It might be regulations, it might be a whole host of things. Because then the ERP is really configured for your business. Yes, fine, out of the box is kind of suited for you, kind of a one size fits all from that point, but there's a lot of configuration that needs to be done way before you actually get to that go live. So point number 1 for me is probably the biggest one here. Consultants that don't understand your business. What have you got here?
I've seen it so many times over.
That given that your first thing was I'm like, okay, here we go.
Yeah, I could do a whole episode on this, but I've seen this and it's sad and it's preventable in many different areas, right? You've signed up with the VAR to do an implementation and there's a consultant on your project that just doesn't get your business. They don't understand the model. They don't understand the impact that the ERP is having. They don't understand, your data, and you just keep going along with the implementation, right? And you end up going live and what everyone thinks should be happening in the system doesn't happen in the system. Everyone is confused. It's complete chaos. And consultants usually, right, especially not good ones out there, right, won't take any responsibility for a failed implementation. But it's important to understand early on, does a consultant care and do they understand your business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you have any kind of feeling or inkling that they don't, I would stop, right? Because then you could go to your VAR or the consultant's manager and say, hey, this person really doesn't understand our business. We need the proper consultant that does understand our business, maybe, or maybe you need to find another VAR. I can't stress this enough. You got to take it seriously. Like, you have to know that this person is responsible for the success of your go live at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And if that person can't really get it, it's not going to happen.
I think for me on the customer side, warning sign would be if that consultant only talked about features and not outcomes. Like, it's easy to list off the features. Well, it can do this, it can do that. No, don't tell me about that. Tell me what the outcome to me is. Tell me that, don't tell me, where it's got multi-level bomb. Great. Don't put the onus on me to think about how that feature fits in my business. You've got to say to me, oh yeah, when you do that outside processing, well, we can actually bring that into the system and be able to, put that in and track it in the bill of material. That means you want your, your supply chain haven't got to keep track of, that Excel that they're using right now. Well, that goes in a bit. Like, talk to me like that about the outcomes. Then I feel like, you actually know exactly what's going on here. And I would couple that with maybe to mitigate having a consultant that doesn't understand. Yes, you're right. Worst case scenarios is ditch them, maybe even ditch the VAR, but insist on things like discovery workshops. Have a discovery week where every single team can sit down with that consultant and explain their process, go through their walk, do a process walkthrough with them. I think it's probably that is on both sides. I think it's down to the customer as well to be able to explain, or to be able to articulate, right, this is our entire order to cash, warts and all. And then fine, the consultant can go, right, well, you don't need to do that anymore because of this feature. That's fine, because now you're talking about the outcome. Now you're like, right, the outcome is that your process has gone from 50 steps to do this order to cash flow down to 25, because now that's automated. You don't have to do that because of a three-way match, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But you're talking to me about the outcome rather than listing off the features on the spec sheet.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. I think great examples there. My sure tell sign that a consultant knows your business process really well is once you have a discovery that consultant could put together a flow chart and exactly show you visually all the main decision points that you've discussed and pain points alongside with that, your ERP process for that particular topic. That tells me that this consultant understands. And I would stress that if you don't have that with your consultant right now, recommend and ask for a workflow diagram, department to department, on how the ERP layers on top of the business at the end of the day. That will tell you with confidence that this consultant understands your business and how users interact with your data. And if they can't do that, there's a big red flag right there, right? Most people, I feel like, are visual learners. Most people need to understand how things connect from a, connecting the dots from an ERP perspective. Like, you do one thing in ERP, then another thing happens and you run this report, you do this inquiry, you do this process. Because you got to think about, these customers are not coming off of another ERP system. Maybe they are, but it's a different ERP system. They don't understand what an integrated ERP system is, right? It's a new software to them. So as a consultant, you want to make sure you are crystal clear with them on how their business is going to operate within the system. And doing flowcharts, I think, are amazing tools to use as a guide. Number one, to on what that business process looks like, and training. So then they could take that and ensure they're getting the proper training at the end of the day. But if a consultant doesn't understand your business, it's hard to tell that if they're just talking about software. Really hard, because you're just lost in the software and not really mirroring that or coupling that with your business.
Yep.
And that's a risk.
Yep. That's why it's number one. That's why you have to start.
Yeah. And I have one more, knowing consultants and the consultants, when they come out and they say, oh yeah, that's easy. Oh yeah, that's easy. But they don't show you in the system and you just take their word for it. I would stop right there. I would say, if it's that easy, show it to me. Right. And push back a little bit, because that's your job, to make it easier for you. Right. Or if they're doing something, saying, "Oh, I'll take care of that, but don't worry about it." No, as a customer, you want to know what they're doing. You want an explanation of what they changed, why they fixed it, what they did,
Mm-hmm.
instead of just saying you're going to let the consultant do things behind their back, behind the customer's back, and not understand what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some of it is technical in nature. You don't need to learn how to code, but you need to understand the rationale and why some things were done in a certain way at the end of the day.
Yep. I think that's the same as train the trainer.
Mm-hmm.
Really, I think a good vendor should be doing that. Should be saying, "This is the reason why you couldn't post that transaction is because of this. Make sure you do this first." Or there was an issue in the preferences. There was a checkbox. Check that. This is what that line item in the preferences does. When it's unchecked, this happens. When it's checked, this happens. Now you know for next time.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, in the industry itself, just overall ERP consulting, there's a big shortage right now. VARs are having a hard time finding good talent to take on their projects. So it's really important, to try to find the right consultant at the end of the day that understands businesses, that understands how ERP works and operates. Because if you get a bad consultant, that it's basically going to be daylight robbery. That money's going to be gone, and you're going to have a failed go live.
Yep. Or a slow death. I don't know what's worse.
Yeah, I know. Exactly.
Point number 2.
That was hard. Or a slow death. Holy cow. But you're right. Holy cow. You just see you're bleeding money all day long, right?
Yeah. But then it's like no one, I think that's even worse because no one wants to put up their hand and go, I know it's been 6 months. Shut up. Everything's fine.
Yep.
Right. Point number 2. Integrations are not tested thoroughly.
Well, let's do this, Peter. Let's flip 2 and 3 because I think they're then they could be opposites, right? We could say we talked about the consultant.
Oh, okay, fine.
And the second part of it, there is a customer element to this.
Fine. Okay. Point number 3. Point number 2.
2, yes.
Point number 2. Customer does not know what they don't know.
Yeah, this is another big one. So there's an element to the consultant, but then we have to also talk about the other side of the aisle here, which is the customer. The consultant only knows what they know based on customer feedback and based on customers' understanding of their own business, even. Sometimes a customer put the wrong project manager on the implementation that's only been with the customer for a month, and they're taking on an ERP project, which is probably the wrong idea. You want somebody that has a ton of experience in your business, that understands your data, that understands your workflow to be the PM on your ERP implementation, right? You want a person that's going to be a go-getter. You're going to want the person that's going to test thoroughly and not be afraid to speak up if things are kind of going off the rails. Mm-hmm. If they feel like the consultant's not doing the right job, if they don't see what they need to see in the system and get that validated. If you have a weak project manager and they're just taking everything what the consultant said with, face value, that's a big red flag. Your ERP implementation is going to fail. It's going to fall flat on its face. And the consultant's going to have all this documentation that says, yeah, we did a project status call and nobody really brought up these concerns or issues during our status calls. We thought in our head everything was fine and dandy. We went live, and next thing you know, your business is stopped. You can't invoice, you can't ship, you can't do any of these things, right? Who are you going to blame at the end of the day? Yeah, it's easier to blame the VAR, but you got to think of it. Like, did the customer do their due diligence? Yeah. Did they do their job that's required to ensure that they're getting the right information from the consultant, that the process are making sense in their own head?
Yeah. I think many customers underestimate how different an ERP, a single system is compared to legacy tools. Spreadsheets for operations, QuickBooks for finance. If you're running off an Excel spreadsheet, even when it goes wrong, it's like, just overtype this number.
Right.
Fixed.
Right.
It doesn't work like that in an ERP. You can't do that. It's going to assume that you want to do it. You're going to have to do it properly. And I think the customers can be, I think this goes all the way down to the shop floor. I think it's the end users that just assume, the system will handle it. Like, what does that mean? What does that mean? The system will handle it. It's like, it's not sentient. It's just going to do what you tell it. And I think this is true, especially with the go live. The go live is probably the time when you're going to have the least amount of automation switched on. If I was to think of an ERP project from a phased approach, a phase one, a phase two, phase one is only going to be core functionality to be able to make sure that we can continue to do business. It's not going to be automations and when, this particular order goes on, this, the external sales manager gets pinged that this customer's placed an order and the business development manager gets pinged that their quote has been completed and this happens, then this happens. Like, no, people need to learn the system. Everything's going to be manual. It's not super manual. It's going to be a lot better than than doing everything in Excel, but we're not going to have a load of automation workflows and business events triggering and firing because of different things. You're going to be at a point where you need to fully understand what the system is doing and why the system is doing that. So you can't, if you're a project manager on the customer side and you start to hear people go, oh yeah, well, the system will just know what to do. Like, oh, the system will just do that. Like, you need to go to that person and go, well, hang on, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean?
Right.
Don't just assume that the system will be able to do this stuff. I think that's very slippery slope and it's going to lead to gaps in reporting, gaps in business processes, in maybe even compliance, or just basic transactions. I think this is massive for the customer. Someone needs to take the lead. If you've got a project manager that's also some kind of like person that has deep knowledge of every department, that's great. Because they're the ones that can lead that kind of education from within during that project. Like education is really the point of this. I think my mitigation for this would be, testing. Do scenario testing. The project that we just finalized for the UK, we did a whole week of scenario testing. Well, I say a whole week. It was 3 days, 3 full days. Everyone was bought lunch. We had a kind of a team building meal the week before, and we went heavy on scenario testing. We created very real world scenarios. We pulled up an old purchase order from a customer from like 6 months ago and said, customer A has just placed this order for product A, B, and C. We've got enough of product A. We've only got a partial for product B, and we've got none of product C. They need to be purchased on a 12-week lead time. Go.
Exactly.
Hand it over to the team. So it's like, right, sales. That PO has just landed in your inbox. What do you do now? With the new ERP that we're going to up on the screen. And we literally had a laptop. We passed it around the room. Went, there you go.
Yeah.
What do you do now? Test everything. Does it go on?
Exactly.
Is everything looking right?
Yep.
Fine. Now over to purchasing. Do you see that demand of the products that we don't have? Show me how you can see that we've not got enough products and you need to now go and purchase something. It was painful at times, but I think this is really has to be driven from within. So yeah, I guess this is just as important as the previous point really on the customer. The customer needs to, the customer business.
Yeah.
I would say the consultant doesn't stand a chance.
No matter how good that consultant is, does not have a chance. Exactly. And then you match it with the bad consultant and a bad customer. Oh my God. No bueno for any situation there. But we brought up a lot of good points. We've talked about some of this in our previous podcast, how important a pilot test is and doing that properly, doing that successfully to set you up for success on your go live.
Mm-hmm.
But, in a failed implementation, right, sometimes also you could point some things on the customer side where if they took a little bit more thought, if they took this more seriously and just didn't imagine it being a QuickBooks project you install and you go, right, where you're skipping meetings, you don't have the right people in the trainings. Mm-hmm. The project manager is not the right fit for the project, right? No one's looking at data, right? And stuff like that. Like, it's just going to be a failed implementation because whoever was the champion to get an ERP put in there, and they're not involved in the project because they've already handed it off to their project manager, it's not going to be the vision that they hope for when go live happens.
How do you handle this as a VAR? Because we've already said, like, the customer, here's the telltale signs that your consultant is shit. How does this work? How does a VAR go, here's the telltale signs that your customer hasn't got a clue?
Yeah,
pull it and go, guys, you're not ready.
Yeah, absolutely. So we sit down with our consultants and we do an internal pilot test of the customer's processes. So our director of operations will sit with the lead consultant on the project and internally to say, 4 or 5 hours, take us through order to cash, take us through on the AR side, AP side. Let's see how planning is working. How do you do production? How do you handle back orders? Let's see the AR invoice report. Let's see the sales order acknowledgement. does an AP check match. So we do kind of a due diligence internally to make sure that the consultant, number one, has dotted the I's and crossed the T's to the best of our knowledge, right? And then we also require a pilot test approval from our customers. That our customer says that, okay, we've approved the pilot test and we're ready to go live. Otherwise, we pump the brakes on all cut over and go live activities until we try to get an approval of pilot test.
Yep.
So, you kind of have to have those checks and balances in place. Doing this for 25 years, you have to keep your consultants honest and you got to keep your customers honest, right? Because we know the effects it could have, ripple effects that this could have if not done correctly.
Yep.
After go live.
So when we did our scenario testing week, we set up a Teams call with our vendor so they could listen in. And the agreement was that they would not bill us for 8 hours of consulting time, but they would just have one person on the call listening in, doing their other stuff, doing their own work. And we said, guys, feel free, anytime you hear us talking about something and we've misunderstood how the system works, or we're going down a wrong avenue here, feel free, start billing us and jump, unmute and go, guys, you're not right. Whoa.
Right.
You've misunderstood how that piece works in the system. So we knew that our pilot testing, because it's difficult to do pilot testing on a brand new system. There's going to be times, and I know when I sat in there as the PM, there was times when I was kind of thinking, I think this is how it does it. I think that has happened because of this reason.
Yeah.
And well, I never got the unmute of the consultant, but there were times when they did unmute and go, guys, I can hear you're struggling on this. I've just had
this is the way you do it.
This is what you need to do. That was really, really helpful. And we said beforehand as well, during the pilot test, we're going to set up an Excel spreadsheet with a long list, 3 tabs, day 1, day 2, day 3, and it's going to be a dump. I'm going to write up everyone else's notes. But during the whole day, I'm just going to be jotting down things. And sure, 50% of them was just shit. It was just quick checkbox change,
exactly.
job done. And then there were a few where it's we're going to have to think differently. We're going to have to change our approach to this. More training needed, and then it was down to our VAR to go through and categorize it. Is this a training issue? Is it a configuration issue? Is it something deeper that we need to explore, etc., etc.? This is crucial on both sides of the project.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, number 2. 3, integrations are not tested thoroughly.
Yeah, so this one is interesting, right? A lot of ours have some go-to ISV vendors, third-party, solution vendors, like bolt-on solutions for their ERP, whether it be shipping integration, e-commerce connectors or EDI connectors, quality management connectors. Every VAR kind of has maybe 2 or 3 go-to ones, but then every now and then you'll get a project that you're using a new connector that you never used before, right? A connector maybe that customer's already using, or a connector that is filling a gap, but you never use that connector. And this is on the customer side and the VAR side. You implement the connector, but it doesn't get tested thoroughly. Even the out-of-the-box connectors, like for example, Acumatica, a Shopify connector, there are specific ways you implement that. If that's not tested thoroughly, and Shopify is your only source of you bringing in orders and showing on-hand inventory, and you don't set that up correctly, and you go all the way through just doing 1 or 2 tests, blah, 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 don't really kind of expand the scope of doing 50 or 100 items and kind of look at all the different exceptions that you have to go through with Shopify and then inside Acumatica. And then you go live, and then only to realize that, oh, crap, items, our SKUs are not syncing to Acumatica, or our companies or customers in Shopify aren't actual customer organizations inside Acumatica, right? You can miss small details early on that actually have the biggest impact.
Or export customers are being charged tax.
Exactly. Even though it feels small during the implementation and training, don't worry about that. We'll just test one customer, right? But you don't look at the details of, well, how does a parent-child relationship work between a customer and a contact? Right? How does that work within Shopify? What happens if we get an EDI order and now we have to make a change and it goes back, but then the customer cancels that order, right? Things like this happen all the time. You got to look at the 80-20 rule, which Peter, you know very well about. If you don't test this integrations, even if the ERP is doing its job, the integration could fail your go live itself. because you can't get the data in or do anything with the data that comes in any meaningful manner, right? You've integrated a third-party piece of solution or software because there's a gap in the out-of-the-box system. And the gap is big enough that you had to get a solution for it. There was no workaround in the ERP. And if you don't test that thoroughly and understand every single setup and exception to that integration, you're in for a very long haul to stabilize after you go live, because the devil is in the detail with these things. And as much as you give enough attention to the base ERP product, integrations is a huge point. You have to probably give, if that and more. I almost feel like, because you're working with the third party vendor, it's not just the base ERP solution.
Yeah, for me, this comes down to two key aspects. Is one, good data, just good data. I guess I was going to say something else, but I'm thinking about everything: data validation, data cleaning, data gathering, data migration, data mappings. It's got to be good. And then, as you said, test. You have to test not only with real world data, but I would also say real world volume. Yeah. Don't just go, let's just do this.
Do a stress test.
It's a real customer and it's a real product. Great. But what happens when I'm doing, 1,000 orders coming through a day?
Yeah, exactly. Understand that volume, right?
I just have a test plan. Build it like you would with scenario testing or pilot testing. Build a proper test plan.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing.
I agree.
Let's simulate a real world day.
I love it.
Cool. Number 4 then. Mock cutover, not validated.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Mock cutovers. Yeah. So this is us practicing the cutover weekend, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So this is the point where we're like literally turning off the switch of the old ERP or setting fire to Excel.
Yep.
And going into a new system.
Exactly.
So we want to practice that. Is that what we're saying?
That's exactly what we're saying. We want to practice that because depending on the system that you're coming off of, that Excel file might need to be super manipulated, super cleaned at the end of the day. There could be invalid characters. There could be, word wrapping going on. There could be merged columns, right, together. You got to parse out data. And to do that during go live is I wouldn't say a disaster, but it's unnecessary. Because if we could test that early on, right, we could have the scripts ready of that same file coming out at your actual cutover and be prepared for the format and make updates. So then we could get that data into the system, right? We could be prepared for reconciliation differences. We could be prepared for which items are already missing between your Acumatica instance, for example, and your current operational database, right?
If someone reactivates the SKU like days before cutover.
Yeah, exactly. Clean up your AR file. Clean up your AP file. How does that look like, right? Set of instructions. Let's say if you have, let's say you have 200,000 SKUs, 230,000 SKUs, right? And you're maybe doing an import of those SKUs and you're going to do an import at cutover, right? Maybe you want to do a test of that. How long does it take? Your cutover plan should not only have the steps, but also have the times that each step takes you. So you don't want to be thinking, this cutover is only going to take me 2 hours, but you start importing items and items take you 5 hours to import. You're so far behind now, right? What if you do a Shopify integration and you turn on the sync for your Shopify customers and orders, and that takes 8 hours. And you didn't expect that because you never tested it. You never tested that during cutover on how that's going to be, how long that's going to take.
Yeah, we had this. I can speak from experience from the UK side. That cutover weekend, I knew going into it, half of our business. So we had 2 different companies operating in the same entity as a combined P&L, and there's 2 separate P&Ls through sub-accounts. But essentially one side of that company, their entire world was make to order. Everything was purchased to complete a specific sales line. No consolidation, large variation on product offering, difficult to do any consolidation anyway. But we knew going into it, coming from Nav, we didn't have any proper PO to SO link. And we had maybe 1,000 sales lines and 1,000 PO lines. So we knew when we moved over into Acumatica, we can import them all, but someone would have to sit down and manually PO link every single sales line to every single PO line. It was going to be terrible. It's a horrible, horrible task to do. Genuinely. But we planned for it. We said this is going to probably take 2 or 3 of us, maybe 4 hours to do manually, one by one. Someone's going to have to do it. There's a reason why the entire core project team are in at the weekend. It's not so purchasing and supply chain can sit there twiddling their thumbs when someone else is doing something. There's a reason why you're here. There's a reason why we're paying for lunch and your dinner's out and a nice day trip to London as a thank you. Like, you're going to have to earn your keep for that. And it's going to be sitting down reviewing 1,000 PO lines.
Yeah.
But it was no shock. It was no surprise. By the time that we actually got to having to do it, they were kind of got over the fact that they're going to have to do it. But it was planned for. And I think that is crucial. It's crucial to plan the timing of these things, or at least a best guess. So when you get to that point, it's like, we know we're going to have to spend 4 hours doing this. There's no other way of speeding it up or automating it. It's just a shit task. And we actually found that kind of putting that out on the table early before that go live, by the time that we actually started our cutover, which was Friday afternoon, I called it. It was kind of 7 p.m. on a Friday. We got together as a team. We said, look, what do you want to do? Do we want to continue going later and later on Friday, knowing that we've got this shit task at some point on the weekend? Do we want to continue banging out this cutover on a Friday evening with the possibility of having Sunday off completely? Do you want to carry on going? Maybe we can do the PO links on the Saturday afternoon. And they were like, yeah, let's keep going. Let's just keep going. If I think we didn't convey the whole, this is what we've got to do, here are the tasks, here's the crappy tasks, and be realistic and say it's going to take you a good solid 4 hours doing the same thing over and over again, I don't think we would have had the people have that kind of tenacity to want to continue on a Friday doing it.
Yeah. Right.
So I think that really helps. I think being able to plan the timings of this stuff.
Yeah, because if you don't do that right, you could potentially delay the go live. Your go live cutover could go into Monday, even Tuesday. And then when you are thinking the go live was supposed to be this amazing, great success story, that go live is failing day by day by day by day. And the further it goes, you can't ship, you can't invoice, right? Users are more frustrated because now they're doing things manually around the system. You're losing confidence, right? The customer's closer to going back to what they were doing before. And it's not good for anybody. So I think that mock cutover is super important. And if you are in a position where you're going to be going live soon, I would say take a weekend, work with your VAR, work with your consultant, and tell them we want to do a mock cutover if they don't recommend it. And so you could make sure you know what to expect that weekend. And Peter, as you explained, now everyone is aware, everyone is certain that we're going to get the job done. You know how long it's going to take. And then you could maybe even have Sunday off for that cutover and be prepared for Monday when you look at go live support.
Yep. And talking about going live and go live support, point number 5 is not enough go live support, especially in that first week. We always called that first week the hypercare week. It's the one that is like, it's a newborn baby and it's kind of it's sensitive and it's delicate and it's got soft, you've got to be very, very careful. That's the time where you're most vulnerable. And I think really that first week for me, there's a couple of things. Well, I've got lots of points really, but I think that first week sets the tone. I think from a cultural aspect, it sets the tone to everyone. I think if users start to struggle without help, adoption rate plummets. I think immediately, because I think end users are probably going to be the ones that are most distanced from the project. It's, if you think about your core team, you've got to have someone that's representing that department who's part of a core team. They're probably talking to their people, but they probably don't have any exposure to the VAR. They don't have full knowledge of everything that's gone on in the project up to that point. Often it's people, the end users are the most experienced people as well. And if you lose them at this point because they've struggled in that first week, I think the adoption rate plummets immediately. It could be anything. It could be missing forms in the system, incorrect settings, unfamiliarity if you haven't been like that core team or the representative for the department in the core team hasn't been cracking the whip. Like, have you been doing or practicing that? Have you been logging into the sandbox every day to like start to feel comfortable where buttons are and where menus are? I think that all starts to compound, especially when you're under pressure of being told the system's live, we are live, this is real customer orders going in, this is no longer sandbox, it's our live production order. I think that could end up as a recipe for chaos on Monday.
Yeah, 100%. And kind of adding to that, it's, you switch the system on, and next thing you know, you can't find anyone to help you, right? You maybe have a consultant that's remote. You decided not to spend the money on on-site help.
I think
there's not a developer available.
Having a consultant disappear on Monday is just, you're asking for trouble.
Exactly.
Pay the extra. At least have them there a few days, even to just do a floor walk. Just go around so they're visible. Good guys, everything all right? You don't have to actually do anything. I think this is the thing. You should have this chain of command. You should have end users to their like work stream owner to, well, it depends if you have a work stream owner as the core team. Even if you don't have that work stream owner, if they're not part of the core team, escalate it into the core team. Core team escalates it to the PM. PM escalates, if they can't fix it, escalates to the consultant.
Exactly.
At some point, someone should be able to fix the end user's issue. But I think you need that. So it's worth it. It's worth it having the PM, having the consultant there for at least 2 or 3 days, just to be that visible presence. I know that we did that for ours. We kind of brought core team members and said, right, everyone's working in the main office today. But periodically during the day, every single day for that whole week, we went over to the factory, separate building, just so people could see us. Hey guys, everything all right? How's it going?
Yeah.
All cool?
Exactly.
Any issues? Cool.
Exactly.
No.
Got to do that. Because, the key user team obviously is different than the end user team, right? And sometimes the end users, even sometimes the key users, they get stage fright. You pull back the curtain now you have to perform at the end of the day. And, as much as maybe you've done training, you've dot the I's across T's, people are going to get nervous, right? They're going to forget something. They're going to maybe process a record that they shouldn't have processed. Maybe they process picks, from the wrong location, right? The list goes on, right? But instead of not fixing that right at that time, that issue just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger over time. So it's important to have a go live team, because there could be something where what you thought the process was going to look like because you automated it so much in the implementation, but then when you started to actually do it in go live, you realize, oh, we have to peel back the onion over here. We have to kind of do this a little bit more manual, or we have to do it this other way, right? There's going to be some changes. There's going to be some fine tuning that you're going to do in a live situation. So having somebody there to make those decisions quickly, to show you how the system could, pivot in a different way, to get orders out, do your financials, get orders in, so on and so forth, is critical. I think that first week, to have the proper support, to have the internal project team fully dedicated, along with the consulting team from the VAR available to make sure you go live. And then also your first month end close. You want to make sure that the VAR is there to help hold your hand, assist you, like you're releasing good financials. They're auditable. You have your financial statements available, right? You're able to do your bank reconciliation without any problems, right? You're able to reconcile credit card statements. Get all this done first month. Set yourself up for future success. Because if you don't, bank recs aren't going to be done. You're not going to be able to close the books. People are going to start doing entries in wrong periods, or periods that should have been already closed. And that's just going to look bad from many different perspectives. So the go live itself should be planned accurately, so you have the right resources, you have the right financials, you have the right processes, procedures for month 2. Month 2, I feel like, should be a month where you start really seeing consultants kind of dying out from the project, right? You get handed over to support. The team is very confident the internal customer team is confident in the business processes and using Acumatica. Very little issues. Maybe you have a small issues list that you're tackling, but overall the system is stable. And there's no thought of going back to what they were doing before.
I would say week 2.
Yeah, week 2. Absolutely.
Really? It's not going to be any different to week 1.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
I think another tip, if we're going to include tips, my tip here is, at least in that first week, have a daily check-in. Have that core team come back together, go, right, the whole day, there's been lots of things, you've had questions, you've had walkabouts, let's come together as a team and write down things so we don't forget them. So when we get back in tomorrow morning, these are going to be long days, especially for the core team. They're going to be the first in the office and the last to leave. Like before the chaos and everyone turns up tomorrow morning, we can come with a fresh head. Here's the things we wrote down yesterday. And it gives them the evening and, during the night to kind of not stew on it, but sleep on it, I guess.
Yeah.
Of things they've noted down. And I think, well, it's not a tip, but if we're talking about warning signs, and I've said that a few times in this podcast, I think the positive sign is, I know I felt this as a PM, it was a little bit, I wouldn't say disappointing, but it was certainly anticlimactic. Monday, there was nothing happening. It was just the bubble of the office, like business as usual. There was no chaos. There was no people running around. There's no one tugging at your shirt sleeve going, oh, I've got a problem. Like, I was like, am I needed? What's going on? It felt a bit weird. It's like, it was kind of, oh, that's a bit of an anticlimax.
Yeah.
But then I realized that's exactly what you want.
That's exactly what you want. That's exactly what you want.
By the second day, I turned up and I spent half the day playing on my phone in the back office with a consultant. And like, everything all right? Yeah, I think so. People
moving inventory, everything.
The office, people doing things. Joe in the warehouse booking things in, and exactly putting orders on.
That's
Gary's
exactly how it should be.
Work orders.
Yeah, that's exactly how it needs to be. Yeah, it shouldn't be that it's a chore to do something in the ERP system because you've done the right steps leading up to cutover and go live. Everyone's super comfortable and understands when their part begins and when their part ends, right? And they do it just perfectly in the system. And not to say things might not come up in the future, they will, but there won't be showstoppers and they won't be situations where you're always doubting the system. Go lives are so important. And I feel like if we don't do these things, you're going to have a failed go live for sure.
Yeah. And I really think that you should 80-20 this stuff and put into phase one the core processes. You need someone to gatekeep it, because as much as you want to build confidence, you want to build excitement of people using the new system, you've got to also kind of gatekeep some of the stuff that they're asking for as well. Go, oh, can it do this? Can it do that? Like, yes, let's not worry too much. Like, don't come to me on day 2 asking for that.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You got to prioritize.
You got to kind of balance that stuff out. Yeah. Very good. I enjoyed this one. Why your go live will fail. I might actually put that in caps. I think, does that how clickbait works? I don't know.
Yeah.
If you don't do this, your go live will fail.
Fail.
And we have like us with like crying. There's
the
thumbnail.
Exactly.
Yeah. Gotta click on that episode and see what they're talking about. They're very good. But I think that's it. For us. I think we both agree go lives are exciting, but they can also be pretty brutal if the right preparation isn't in place. So
yeah,
I guess if anyone's listening, remember your consultants, 1, need to understand your business. 2, your customers need to convey and understand themselves your own business. Integrations have to be tested thoroughly. Remember, real world data, real world examples, real world volume. And I would also say mock cutovers are non-negotiable. They should be a line item in your project plan. Multiple mock cutovers.
Absolutely.
So I think that with that, pair that with a strong go live support, clear understanding of the plan at every phase will give the project the best chance of success. So if you found today's conversation helpful, don't forget to subscribe, like the episode, share the episode, smash the like button and the subscribe, tell your friends next time when you're in the playground tomorrow morning, go, here guys, I listened to this really cool podcast. These 2 guys, Nirav and Pete, they do it for free. Connect with us on LinkedIn. We're both on LinkedIn. We post this stuff. Yes. We share a new episode when it comes out. So yeah, feel free to connect. We do this, as I said, for free, just because we just love talking about ERP. So, make sure to reach out to us. So if you've got a story about your go live gone right or wrong, we'd love to hear it. Drop it in the comments. Would like to jump in at the deep end and be potentially a guest to talk about how your go live experience went, please reach out to us. So with that said, until next time, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Nora.
Thank you, Peter.
And I'll catch you in 2 weeks' time.
You got it, sir.
Have a good one.
Take care.